What's up, everybody? It's Miles Turner, the Indiana Pacers. You're listening to the Paceroos Podcast. Be sure to follow @Paceroos on Twitter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Paceroos Podcast, the only Australian NBA podcast with a bias towards the Indiana Pacers. Coming to you after a pretty busy week in the life of the Pacers, a couple of home games, a disappointing home loss that we'll get to, an all-star announcement, which was very exciting, and we're going to touch on some surprise players and teams that have impressed us over the last couple of weeks, including one particular player that we can't not talk about based on the tear that he's been on. We'll start it off with the loss to the New York Knicks that happened a few hours ago as we record this. An unfortunate result, 92-85, one of the lowest scores of the season, if not the lowest score of the season. I'm sure one of you guys will tell me if it is or not. But Justin, it was a pretty disappointing day, but we kind of knew that one of the first games that Vic would come back would be the difficult one, or the bogey game, but we probably thought it was going to be the Chicago one and not this one.
You are right, Adam. I think we did mention last episode we recorded to preach patience once Oladipo came back. That was our main sentiment, all three of us, that, this is going to take some time. And Kevin Pritchard, essentially at the start of the year, he said this season is going to be 3 phases. Phase 1 without Vic, Phase 2 once Vic comes back, and Phase 3 once he's healthy and the team's roaring to go. So the Pacers just entered Phase 2 yesterday, really. And we're 1-1. So that Chicago game, I didn't think would win, but obviously Vic came through in the clutch. And the Knicks game, it was woeful. I think we scored 11 points in the second quarter, our season low. Marcus Morris was hitting big shots. It was just a terrible game all round. But look, we did say preach patience, so we've got to live through that.
Yeah, it's really important not to throw our hands up in the air and start calling for people's heads and start saying that, some of the comments that I've seen on social media and the trade this and the fire that. We've talked about earlier in the year how people can be very passionate and probably overreact to these types of things, particularly with the Knicks, with the record that they had, 13-36 leading in today's game. So a game that you expected to win on the schedule if you'd looked at the start of the season. But, you've got a guy coming into the lineup that's taking 8 shots. 8 shots for the first game against the Bulls, 14 shots today against New York. Hasn't made a high percentage of those, but we can't expect a guy that's missed a year to do that. And you have to expect that it's going to be a teething process. You've got a member of the team playing over half the game that hasn't played with 9 of these guys before. So I think for all of those that are really disappointed by today's loss, I can completely understand it. Don't get me wrong. I hate the Knicks as much as anyone. But you cannot take too much from, the first few games following Victor Oladipo's return, just because it's kind of another training camp for the team. It's kind of another preseason. It's kind of, getting the feeling out process. Those early games that we saw against Detroit and Cleveland that were really poor, the 0-3 start. I mean, this is what we saw at the start of the season as players were starting to get used to each other. And Alex, I'll go to you now for your thoughts, but we thought that something like this might happen, and you've kind of just got to weather the storm, as Justin said.
Yeah, I was literally just going to say the exact same thing. This is almost identical to the first 3 games where this team's really just figuring it out. So you talked about, Justin, that 3 parts of the season, and like you mentioned, this is the second part right now. This is a learning process for these guys. These guys, you said 9 of them. 9 people out of the 15-person roster have never played with Victor Oladipo before. That is a large number of players, and this is going to take a lot of time. It's only 2 games. Please, Pacers Twitter, please relax. The team is not being sold. We're not moving the team to Seattle. It's okay. We had 1 loss to the Knicks. It was a very bad game. We rebounded terribly. Marcus Morris, he turns into Kevin Durant every time he plays in Banker's life. It's going to happen. You're going to have these types of losses. We've had them before. It won't be the last time. And I just think Pacers Twitter needs to calm down a little bit. As you can tell, they get me a little bit riled up sometimes, but yeah, it's a learning process. Victor Oladipo, I'm fine with him taking 14 shots. I couldn't care less if he makes 0 of them. The fact that he's getting his shots and he's getting to his spot is more impressive to me than if he wasn't taking any shots at all and was being passive.
Facts.
So yeah, so I think it's actually a positive that he's taking these shots and he's being aggressive, and he's quick. He looks almost quicker than he before he got injured.
Yeah.
He's blasting past guards. So, like you said, preach patience. It's going to be all right. And yeah, I'm excited. I know it was a terrible loss, but I'm excited from what I've seen from Oladipo so far.
Alex, you see sort of the very, very best and the very, very worst of the supporter base on social media, being that out of the three of us, you're by far the most active. You post content, you create content, players like that content and share it, so your name gets out there, and your talents mean that you hear from a lot more fans than Justin and I do, although we have a lot of interactions with the Paceroos Twitter and Instagram accounts. But does it get this bad after a loss? I mean, it's a disappointing loss. It's one loss. We did win the last game. Are there really people out there that are saying, trade Miles Turner, trade, Victor Oladipo, the team's going to move, doom and gloom, sort of weird stuff like that? Is that what you see?
It gets bad, man. It gets really bad. I honestly don't know how many times I have to tweet out the Indiana Pacers are not trading Miles Turner. I have tweeted that exact same tweet, copy and paste, about 5 times already this season. We saw an article about a week ago saying he was off the trading block, and then I wake up today, and what do I see? Rumors that he's going to be traded again with John Collins and Miles Turner on the trading block. I could honestly go on a 45-minute rant just about some of the shit I see from people. Honestly, it's actually comedy sometimes. I know I send you guys a lot. I mean, I get abused sometimes. Like, people will quote my tweet and go, "You're a clown. You're an idiot. What do you mean? Why are we not trading him? Why should we not trade him?" It is just. I used to respond to a lot of it, but now it's just comedy to me. Honestly, there is one thing I will say to you guys. Stay away from Pacers Facebook, Pacers Twitter, Pacers Instagram. It is fine. Stay away from Pacers Facebook. I joined it for a day and I left it the next day. That's all I will say.
Yeah, there's certainly an influx of boomers on Facebook compared to Twitter, and they tend to have even stronger opinions than the Twitter fans.
100%.
And yeah, it's not pretty. I've been on Pacers Facebook as well, and the comment section is not a place that I ever like to go, and probably ever will go again. But we must sound like broken records. We've got subscribers and listeners that have been listening to us for the last few months, and we've said it again and again and again. This team has not been fully healthy, fully together, and had the opportunity to gel as a unit at all this season so far. Now they get the opportunity to do that. That's going to take some time. We need to preach patience, as we should change the name of the podcast to Preach Patience. But, to anyone who thinks that Miles Turner is on the trade block, I think they're not necessarily listening to what the team is saying, and they don't necessarily understand the history of this team, the way that they deal with transactions. Justin, you said it before. Kevin Pritchard does not like to make in-season trades. We're not about to trade a starter, someone that plays significant minutes, unless we get back someone that can, someone that we believe can take us to the next level, and that would require the front office to basically say we're all in this year for a championship, and there's been no signs of that sort of talk from the team at all. I think the team knows exactly where it is, and that is a strong Eastern Conference playoff team when fully healthy, with the opportunity to be able to progress beyond the first, second, and maybe even to the third round this season. But as you said repeatedly, Justin, next year I think is the year that everyone comes in fully healthy, fully fit, with a year under their belts, and we can really go to work.
Yeah, next year is the big year for us. I think I've said it before, like you mentioned. I think that'll be the year we can hopefully contend maybe for the Eastern Conference Championship, where this year I think the three of us are probably agreed on we just hope to win a series. I think that would be a successful year with Oladipo coming back just to win a series. But again, like something we've mentioned on other episodes as well is the NBA. Anyone can beat anyone. I watch NBA as a job practically, and the amount of upsets I see on a daily basis is insane. Like, bad teams beat good teams all the time. It's just the NBA. It happens. So don't get too upset about losing to the Knicks. I just think, the Knicks beat Miami a week or so ago. I don't think I saw Heat fans throwing the towel up and saying our season's over. So, just another word to preach patience there. But, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, we played Dallas on Tuesday in Australia time, Monday night in America with no Luka Doncic. So we should go in favourites to that match. But again, obviously, getting Oladipo back into the lineup is a transition period.
It's a really interesting stretch over the next 7 days or so. I mean, we've got Dallas and then we've got a home and home with Toronto, who are a really good team.
They're
and
big.
Massive. Arguably our best win of the season came against Toronto just before the new year. And, the Dallas game will give us an opportunity to potentially play a really short-handed team that we could capitalize on and continue that chemistry. But the Toronto games are where we're going to see the level of competition that we're facing significantly increase, and we'll see if we can match that. And Alex, I mean, it's not without the realms of possibility to think that this team could fall in a little bit of a hole in the early month, but then as we get into Brooklyn, New Orleans, playing teams like New York again later in the month, I think we need to be realistic with our expectations here. And our expectation should be that this team by after the All-Star break, by around the end of the month of February, is showing the sorts of chemistry that we saw at the start of the season when we went on that sort of, I think it was a 6 out of 7 or 7 out of 8 run of wins.
Yeah, and I think people forget that this team's still on track for the best record the franchise has had since 2014. They're on track for over 50 wins. People have to remember that. So, like you guys mentioned, this stretch coming up, I mean, you play the Raptors a couple of times, the Bucks. So, you've got to be realistic. I know a lot of them are at home, but they're still going to be tough wins. If you can escape with one of those wins against the Raptors and then somehow, even if you don't beat the Bucks, if you just take care of business against the Pelicans, Nets, and Knicks, who realistically we all should be beating, then I think, this is a pretty good homestand. You probably win, 5 or 6 out of the 7 games, considering that Oladipo is going to be struggling and just getting back into things. So, 100% I'll take that. And, like Justin said, those games are huge, especially for tiebreakers coming playoffs. We took care of business against the 76ers. We won the tiebreaker there. I think I could easily see the Raptors finishing around, 3, 4, 5 like we're fighting for. So, these are games you definitely have to show up and you have to play well and you have to win them.
Well, we played Toronto 3 times over the course of this month. We close out the season series, and we're 1-0 up on them. So we have to win 2 out of the 3 games. We have to win that season series, and we have to make sure that in a tiebreaker situation that we put ourselves in the very best position to be able to get the 3rd seed from them, or the 2nd seed from them, or even the 4th, to get a home playoff series. These games are vital. Every game is vital, but when you're talking about a conference opponent that's fighting for a similar seed, as you say, Alex, it takes it to a different level. I think we definitely, it sounds like, dodged a bullet with Luka Doncic, who's been, I would say, in the top 5 best players in the league this year. So hopefully we can close out the 3-game homestand with a really positive result against Dallas and get that win back on the board. And if you don't think that those players aren't, more angry than we are about today's loss and the way that they played and the level of execution on offense, I mean, you don't really understand this team. 85 points in 4 quarters is not what this team is all about this season. And they've been an entertaining team. They've been a pretty high-octane team. There've only been a couple of times that they've scored under 100 points, but they haven't won one of those games. I mean, you look at the last few losses on when we scored less than 100 points. At Utah, we scored 88 points. At New Orleans was 98. At Milwaukee was 89. So the last 3 times we've scored under 100 points, we've got smashed. So, this team needs to put up points in order to succeed, and that's the trade-off we made between defense and offense at the start of the season. Guys, we saw TJ Warren get injured partway through that game and only be restricted to 23 minutes. I don't think you can understate how important that guy is to the team. When you need a bucket, when you're down, as I've said before, I always see TJ Warren as the guy to get us back out of the hole a little bit and give us a little bit of confidence. And Justin, it hurts to lose a guy like that, even against a bad team like New York.
It definitely does. And just quickly, you did mention about the 100 points with Pacers. I'm pretty sure someone can quote me if I'm wrong. I'm sure they will. But Chris Denari said Pacers actually haven't won a game when they haven't scored over 100 this year. So, yeah, there was that stat for you, which was always looking bad in the fourth quarter when we're on 80 or so points. It wasn't
Makes sense.
For the Pacers. But, yeah, with TJ Warren, I don't know, like, I saw he got sent to hospital. I didn't think it was that bad of a hit. I thought, he'll get up, maybe go to the bench for a moment. But obviously sometimes I don't know, maybe he hit his head on the floor where I didn't see. But he hit his head. So, yeah, like you said, Adam, he's been great this year. Very underrated player in the NBA, I think. He's a walking bucket for us. It was a big loss. Hopefully he comes back very soon. So I'm assuming... Yeah, I don't know what the starting lineup will be. I'm assuming Justin Holiday will get the start.
Yeah, you'd have to think so. I think you need a player like that shifting to the starting lineup if you're going to keep Lamb in there and keep Oladipo off the bench.
Yeah.
I think the only other guy that you could potentially turn to would be Doug, but I think you lose a bit of defense with that particular change, and I like the idea of Doug coming off the bench and the rotation that Doug sees with his start of the fourth quarter. He tends to put up points and that sort of thing. You don't want to get that out of whack, and Justin Holiday is the glue guy to end all glue guys. He will play whatever role you ask him to play. So Alex, you've been on his bandwagon all season, and I've just joined you recently. So I think Justin Holiday is definitely the starter for me. What about you?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think obviously we hope Warren's fine. And of course, this happens on the first night the Pacers have been healthy all season. This happens. So, that just sums up the year for the Pacers pretty much. Just haven't been able to stay healthy. But, obviously happy for my boy Justin if he does get to start. But under these circumstances, that absolutely is terrible. And, we saw Brogdon missed a few games. I would say Warren will probably miss the next one or two, but hopefully he's able to come back for one of those Raptors games.
Can I just jump in here for a second? And you mentioned Brogdon, Alex. I would be remiss if I did not bring up.
I knew you were going here.
I was watching it, and I actually joked to my buddy sitting next to me, saying, "If this is a flagrant one, I'm going home."
Oh my god, that was
like, oh my god, it was the worst foul call I've ever seen in my life.
And
I actually didn't even think it was really a foul. Like, the Knicks player kicked his leg out, like the old Reggie Miller, which they changed the rules. Yeah, whatever, call it a foul. He landed on his foot. Okay. How is that a flagrant one?
Ridiculous. And Reggie Miller, yeah, he tweeted about it. Did you see that?
Well, yeah, if Reggie's saying it's a bad call for the offensive or the defensive player there, what does that tell you? Like, he's not biased towards Indiana at all. He's saying the three-point shooter there. That was one of the worst calls I've ever seen in my life. I have to admit it.
And that's all we'll say about that, I think. I think there's nothing more you can say. I mean, it was a terrible call. I find it interesting that the NBA referees tend to get such a reputation in among, especially announcers. Like, I found it just as a complete side note. I was listening to the Altitude Sports Network, the Denver radio feed yesterday in their game versus Milwaukee as I was driving, and their lead announcer actually said regarding the crew chief, he said the crew chief's name, and he said that's not a sentence I'd ever thought I'd say in my life. As in, he never thought that guy would be good enough to get a head chief role. Like, it was brutal. He was trashing the referees, something chronic on the radio broadcast, which I found to be quite humorous, but also really glaring that, some people say that certain referees are bad, poor referees. They call really bad fouls and their names get thrown around on Twitter. I won't specific
Come on, name names. Name names.
No, I'm not going to name any names. No.
I already know the one you're talking about.
Fox Sports, mate. So we don't want any Fox Sportsness saying the Paceroos have said this is the worst referee in the league. So I don't want that on my resume. But I don't know what sort of work the NBA are doing on that. You would think that they, in the wake of the Donaghy scandal 10 years ago, they would not want a particular referee's name to be associated with really bad calls. So I don't know whether they'll do any work on that, but there's definitely been a couple of referees' names floating around on social media. Have you guys seen that too?
Yeah, indeed, I've seen that.
Well, I think that's why I actually really like the NBA now with the Coach's Challenge. I think that's been really successful. Like, I love it. I know it stops the game and everything like that. Some people might not enjoy it because it's not traditional basketball, but the Coach's Challenge, I don't know the actual statistics. I know a few months ago, over 50% of the calls actually got overturned. So what's that telling you? And then you bring in the other, I've seen some games where coaches just pull out a challenge in the last kind of 2.5 minutes just for kind of, we may as well give it a shot. So if you take those out, I'd say nearly 60% of coaches' challenges actually getting overturned, and that's just showing you how many maybe wrong calls. It must be extremely difficult to ref NBA. Like, I've sat courtside.
Definitely.
They're so big. Like, you try reffing LeBron James driving the hoop, he probably gets fouled every time he goes to the ring, but you can't call it. So the guys would have one of the toughest jobs in sport. But the coaches' challenge has been very interesting. But it's probably time we mention the All-Star we've got on our team.
Hey.
Yeah, some positive news. Domas Sabonis got named to the All-Star team, guys. Was that a surprise? We'd been peddling his name all season, but at the same time, Justin, were you shocked to see a Pacer got in?
No, not at all. I would have been pretty devastated if no Pacer got in. We're 5th seed without our best player all year. When we ran the poll a month or so ago, where it was between Domas and Sabonis, you remember I was on the fence, but with Brogdon being out so many games after that, I think you had to give the nudge there to Sabonis. Yeah. He's been our pillar. I want to mention 2 quick things. One of them negative, one of them positive. I'll start with the negative, which I'm sure one of you two will bring up. Was that Nate Duncan's tweet?
I was just about to say.
Trash.
We'll table that one for you two guys. But on a positive note, just want to mention, Alex, that video you made with the 2-for-1 All-Star Domas, Victor, Paul George thing was absolutely fire. I love watching that with all the ESPN journalists saying, Pacers made an awful trade. Oh, what were the Pacers thinking? And then, hey, who won that trade now? We got 2 All-Stars. Paul George has left OKC. I know we're over the Paul George stuff by now, but that was just fantastic, and I love that video, Alex.
Yeah, I had to make that. That was an absolute joy to make. But you mentioned Nate Duncan. I wish you didn't, because I didn't want to talk about him. But that man got ratioed on Twitter more than I've ever seen. I think that has like over 3,000 or 4,000 comments. And
JJ.
I was about to say I have to bring up Chris Denary and JJ and Pat Boylan as well. They all jumped in the comments to absolutely roast him. You absolutely love to see it. That was I thought that was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, a lot of my friends have kids, and they went to the Sesame Street Circus this weekend in Tassie, and Nate Duncan was there as one of the clowns. So that's all I got to say about that.
It's someone who hasn't watched Indiana basketball. You just know.
Yeah.
As a Pacer fan, he's probably watched 1 or 2 games, maybe the one against Lakers and Boston. He has not watched Pacers any game. He doesn't know what Sabonis has done for us. It's a classic national media person who just says, "Oh, Sabonis, who's that?"
Yeah, look, there is a vocal minority on Twitter that don't necessarily appreciate Domas's work or think that he's slightly overrated. And while they're entitled to their opinion, I don't necessarily agree with them. I've seen him be compared to David Lee on Twitter, which is interesting, and I completely disagree with that. You need a guy who's reliable, who can get you 2 points at the end of the shot clock, who can get down low, get an offensive rebound, get a putback, roll to the basket. Like he's great at the pick and roll with Brogdon. There's been a lot of talk about his chemistry with Doug McDermott. Zach Lowe ran that in his column this week to say how good they've been together. So you've got a great relationship offensively between Domas and Malcolm Brogdon on the pick and roll. You've got a great relationship offensively between Domas and Doug McDermott. Who's the common denominator? Domas Sabonis. He's clearly an elite offensive player. We run our offense through Domas, which, has got us to the, top 5 teams in the West where without a best player, it's clear that he's carrying the load for the Pacers on offense. So it was no surprise that he got into me and thoroughly deserved, taking nothing away from anyone else on the team at all, but thoroughly deserved that Domas got into the All-Star team. A couple of snubs. I want to get your thoughts on particularly Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. Alex, I'll start with you. Should either of them have made it? And if either of them should have made it, at whose expense?
Oh, you've thrown me a tough one here. You know what? I'm going to say, I know, man, it's tough because people value records differently. Mm-hmm. But the fact that Trae Young is a starter tells me that I think Devin Booker should have been an All-Star. And I'm going to say he should have been replacing Chris Paul, who I think's had a great season, taking nothing away from CP3. I just think Devin Booker's been sensational this year. Oh, man, Bradley Beal. It's so tough. He's put up insane numbers, but who do you take him out for, though?
Lowry would be my only
Lowry,
one,
really?
maybe. Well, yeah. I'm not saying I'll do it, but he'd be the only one where you think about it.
Well, I think that's where the coaches thing comes into play. I think they picked Lowry over Beal simply because of the fact the Raptors are second seed in the East. So, for Booker, I think he probably should have made it. Beal, I think I'm more okay with him missing it.
Yeah, I would have, hot take, would have picked Booker over Westbrook, personally.
Really?
Yeah. I'm probably a little bit of not a hater, but I don't necessarily appreciate Westbrook's game as much as others. But I think Booker's been more impressive than Russ for me this year, and I do find it difficult to place Bradley Beal in amongst all of the Eastern reserves because it is a very well-deserved group of Eastern Conference reserves. But yeah, I think Lowry would be the one for me too if Beal was to make it in. So yeah, it's a tough one. The league is so deep now that you will always get players that miss out. And what I'd love to see is we've heard these players say they, it's not the game I grew up with, or express dissatisfaction through their partners or through their management or through their family or through their friends. Tell us who you should have got in over.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're gonna take it to that level and you're gonna trash the coaches and the voters and the players and the fans and the media, etc., then tell us who you're better than. If you're gonna take such
did you see the
issue
Jackson
with it,
Hayes video?
Don't get me started on that video.
It was a Rising Stars game, and he was telling the league to suck. Like, what is he doing?
And he's like crying,
and he's done nothing. Sorry, Jackson, you've done nothing. Like. You haven't done anything in the league yet. I'm sure you'll be a great player. I hope you're a great player. Wish you all the best. But you haven't necessarily set the world alight this year to the point where you should be getting in on Team USA over the guys that made it. Like, once again, you tell me who you should have got in over, and then we can have a conversation if you think that you're better than that person. And also, next time, what I want to see from Jackson Hayes is next time he plays anyone that made that Rising Stars game, I want to see him put up career numbers. I want to see him, play great defense, and I want to see everyone saying, "Wow, Jackson Hayes really bought it tonight because he's trying to prove a point." Like,
but to me, it's a bit catch-22, right? I remember a few years back when I was pushing Danny Granger should have been an All-Star, and the Pacers don't win enough, they're not a playoff team, yada yada yada. But now it's he's an All-Star, he's played at All-Star level, it doesn't matter team record. So it's a bit pick your poison, right? What one do you want? To me, Bradley Beal has put up insane numbers. I mean, Washington, scarily enough, and it shows how poor the bottom half of the East is, they're actually making a playoff push. I think they're only about 3.5 games out of the 8th seed, which is sad. Ridiculous. Yeah, it's crazy. Orlando are dropping off. But look, the coaches know more than me and you, Adam and Alex. They know everything about what schemes they run on defense and who hurts their team more. So if the coaches think those players deserve it, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I am too. And someone that definitely deserves to be an all-star, Damian Lillard. He has been
my boy.
Absolutely incredible.
Let
me read you the last, say, few games of Damian Lillard's career. Today he had 51 points, previously 48. Before that 36, before that 50, 47, and 61. So that's the last 6 games of his career. 2 50-point games, 1 60-point game, two near 50-point games of 48 and 47, and then that 136 that was also a triple-double in a win against the Houston Rockets. Damian Lillard has been the best player in the NBA over the last couple of weeks, and it's barely close. He's hitting shots from the logo, and Justin, you're in love with this dude, and fair enough too.
Yeah, I've mentioned, you two know it, I've mentioned for years and years, this guy's my favourite non-pacer player. I'd kill for him in the blue and gold, although it won't happen. And you mentioned, Adam, those points he's put up, all efficient. He's shot over 50% in every single one of those 50-point games or 40-point games or 60. Like, that is just incredible. I think, I've watched him very closely against the tribute Lakers game for Kobe, and he was just the enemy that night. He was pulling up, he was Kobe-like, wasn't he? He was Kobe-like. He was pulling up from half court. He was getting double-teamed and still hitting the shot. He's just a freak of nature, and I saw his post-game interview with Brooke Olsendan, the former Pacers sideline reporter, and he said he's just never been in a groove like this, and he's never been in this rhythm in his career. So when you're hot, aren't you? And he's on a tear lately. I think if Portland get into the playoffs in the West, they're a little smoky for a little danger for an upset, I reckon, if he gets hot.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously making the conference finals last season, a lot of people predicted that Portland would be a really strong team this year, and they've struggled through the first couple of months of the season. They're just beginning to round in some really good form. They made a really key trade for Trevor Ariza, who I think was stuck in a bit of purgatory with Sacramento early in the season, and now gets the opportunity to play for a playoff team. I think it'll be great for them. And looking at the standings, they're 1.5 games out behind Memphis for that 8th spot. At 7 games behind OKC for the 7th spot, but it's not without the realms of possibilities that they could make a serious run over the next 4 to 6 weeks and challenge for the 8th spot, but even above that at the rate that Damian Lillard is playing, if he can string through another 5-10 games of greatness. And Alex, I think even though there's been a really fun Memphis team in that 8th slot, Portland are far and above in terms of talent and veteran leadership. So I can definitely see them taking that 8th spot before the end of the season. Do you agree?
Yeah, agreed. And just on Damian Lillard, I want to take this stat from Shane Young. He is now 10th in NBA history in 50-plus point games with 9. So he's not just putting up incredible numbers this season. He's putting up historical numbers. And first on that list is Wilt Chamberlain with 118. Michael Jordan second at 31. So I just wanted to point that one out. Wilt Chamberlain was the greatest scorer of all time, but
unbelievable.
For his generation, yeah. But yeah, like you said, I think Trailblazers, if they can start going, that 1-2 punch with him and McCollum, and shout out to Whiteside as well. If you guys watched that Lakers game, he was the second best player on the floor. He was putting
up like 2020, I think.
Yeah, he was just dominating. He was like 27 points, and he had 5 blocks as well. So, if he starts going, Melo gets cooking, that team's dangerous.
Yeah, speaking of dangerous, a team I'd like to talk about is the Denver Nuggets. As I said, I was listening to the radio feed of the Denver-Milwaukee game. Denver just took care of business away from home in Milwaukee against a team that at that point only lost 6 games up until last night, and have the best player in the league playing on their team, and they just got it done. And they got it done without Gary Harris, without Jamal Murray, without Paul Millsap, without Mason Plumlee, who's a key part of their rotation, their backup center. I mean, they're giving significant minutes to PJ Dozier, to Juan Hernan Gomez, Michael Porter Jr. is getting really big minutes, Malik Beasley, Monte Morris is starting, Torrey Craig is starting, Jeremy Grant, who's a good rotation player, but he's playing over 30 minutes a game. Like, you have to take your hat off to Mike Malone for this particular team. I think he was let go by Sacramento a few years ago, and there were a lot of raised eyebrows because I think that was when they were playing particularly well. He managed to get through to DeMarcus Cousins before they traded him away, and for some reason wanted to make a coaching change, and he's gone to Denver, and he's really built a professional franchise with full of players that give full effort, and Justin, he's a guy, it's a team that's unheralded because it's in a smaller market, but Denver are killing it this season. They killed it last season, and I don't think they get enough credit from the NBA.
Couldn't agree more, Adam. I do remember you saying the other week about Utah and Indiana, they're really alike, and it's like the Spider-Man meme looking at each other, which I do agree with. I kind of get that feel about Indiana and Denver as well a bit. Yeah. I know they've got Jokic, who is a star, but apart from that, they're really even across the board. A lot of players can put up 20 points for them, like you mentioned, Murray, Harris, Will Barton. It's going to be interesting in the West. I just don't know if they got enough star power to contend against the Clippers and the Lakers, but it's going to be interesting if they match up with maybe a Houston or a Dallas. Are they going to be able to knock them off in a 7-game series? I just cannot wait for the playoffs on the top 6 of the East and then the top 8 of the West. I think it's going to be fantastic.
We always have these teams each year, and I think over the years, the Atlanta 60-win team is one that springs to mind. The really deep professional team, and Indiana's been, the same, we can say, over the last 15 to 20 years. The deep team, the professional team, the team that plays hard on both ends, but is just at the pointy end of the season lacking the star power to be able to get over the hump. And Denver, hit all of those check marks in the Western Conference. So is the answer, Alex, to trade for a star to try and break up and I guess break up some of that chemistry, or hurt that depth and try and go all in for a guy that could bring them over the hump, or do you try and do what I think the usual trope is, the Detroit of 04? Try and do the Detroit of 04 with Denver. One man.
Kevin Love, please. Free that man from Cleveland. I don't care where he goes. Get him to either Denver or Portland, and I think they become a million times better. Paul Millsap I think you talk about you need more than, one or two go-to guys. Paul Millsap just isn't that guy right now. I don't know if you can get that deal done. Maybe you send Cleveland a first-round pick along with Paul Millsap. He's an expiring contract. I don't know if they would do that, but geez, if they could get Kevin Love on that roster, I think him and Jokic would just be an absolute killer front court. And then when they get fully healthy, man, that team would be insane. I don't know if you guys agree.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I do think they need an upgrade at that wing position, though. Gary Harris almost was a pacer a couple of years ago, and unfortunately just hasn't really stuck for the last couple of seasons in Denver, and hasn't necessarily progressed at the rate that people expected him to progress. Jamal Murray is still a young lead guard, but I think the priority for them, if I was going to upgrade, then I'd try to upgrade and get a star wing. And I don't know how you would do it. I haven't looked into it, but the name that I just keep thinking of is Bradley Beal. I think if there was a way to turn that Millsap contract, the Gary Harris contract, and Michael Porter Jr. into Bradley Beal, I think that's the move that you would make if you were all in as the Denver Nuggets. Justin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with both of you. I think Beal and Kevin Love, obviously they're two star players who have been rumored to be shopped around, probably because both their teams are pretty awful. So yeah, either one does sound good with me. I think Denver is a team, like you mentioned, Adam, who might need to make a move before the deadline if they want to go all in. Maybe they think the Western Conference, it might be too difficult this year, and maybe next year, once LeBron's another year under his legs, might be their shot. So you never know what their GM's probably thinking. But yeah, I'm very excited, and Yeah, can't wait for the playoffs. Obviously, it's near the All-Star break, so this is the time where after the All-Star break, we know what teams are legit. These are the teams that start to turn it on. All right, the All-Star break's done. It's really all business from there. So it's going to be interesting to see what teams fall off and then what teams excel.
Yeah, it's going to be a really big month and a really big couple of weeks. That we've seen reports to say that this is a really active trade period. I would say that the reason for it being such an active trade period is because the league is really wide open as it's ever been for the last, say, 10 years. Since probably probably about 10 years ago when it was that Boston, Orlando sort of time in the Eastern Conference. You had a couple of teams with stars that on paper should be contending, but no one was really sure, and you never really know until a team does it once. So there's a lot of teams that could make a move, a lot of teams that could decide to push all their chips in the middle of the table. I mean, Milwaukee are one that could choose to make a move, but I don't think they will because they're sitting pretty with such a great record. Miami have the contracts to be able to do it. Boston are a weird team with a really thin front line, so who knows what's going to happen there. The 76ers, I think, are coming to a crossroads with their two All-Stars as to which one they move forward with. We just talked about Denver. Dallas is probably a player short. Interesting to see what teams like the Thunder and the Grizzlies do. Where they could go in both directions. They could make the playoffs, or alternatively, they could drop out and try their hand in the lottery. So it's a really unpredictable year, and they're my favorite years, to be honest, because it's boring when I know who's going to win. It is nice to have superstar teams. I do enjoy watching superstar teams and seeing greatness before me, but at the same time, these are the years where teams like the Pacers win a championship.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, I wouldn't. That is a hot take and a half, but yeah, we love it. Just on the Miami Heat, I was going to mention, I could honestly see them making a move for a point guard. I think that, man, I just think that they're one move away from being that real contender up there with the Milwaukee Bucks and Raptors.
Chris Paul was rumored, wasn't he?
Yeah, I was about to say CP, or I don't know what other point guards are available, but I would like to see them. I know I hate Jimmy Butler, but I'd like to see them make a move for a point guard.
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, I wouldn't like to see them make a move for a point guard because I don't want to see them do any better than what they're doing right now. But that's definitely the position of need. I think they've got a mixture of interesting contracts that are either expiring or expiring next season, as well as those young, talented draft picks that they've got in Robinson and Hero. So, they've got the opportunity to be able to turn a few of those assets into a starting caliber point guard. And I think they're one player away, as I said, from being able to really contend. I mean, they've got a strong record, but I think when the playoffs come around, they really need that second star, and at the moment they're lacking the second star, unless you class Bam as that sort of player, and I think he's an anchor, but I'm not sure that he can win you a playoff game. But now that I've said that, watch him win a playoff game against the Pacers in about 12 weeks' time. Guys, we've got a couple of games coming up this week, but we will catch you later in the week. Before I let you go, I would be remiss if I didn't get a Super Bowl prediction out of both of you, where obviously don't talk NFL on this podcast, but it is a massive event, and we know that a lot of our listeners will be settling in to watch the big game tomorrow. So it's 49ers and Chiefs. Justin, who you got?
I'm going the Kansas City Chiefs. They are favourites to win, but I think obviously I watch a bit of NFL, but just a lot better quarterback they've got in Patrick Mahomes. So, 49ers probably better running offense, better defense, but the star player of the game, Mahomes, I feel like he'll be the difference maker. And a little tip, I think the Gatorade, which gets poured on the coach, will be purple.
Wow.
You can bet on everything. You can bet on everything. You can go national anthem bets. Will Andy Reid be the first coach shown on TV? How many times Donald Trump will be shown on TV? It's a lot of fun. I'm sure the Americans know as well. So it should be good viewing.
Alex, who you got tomorrow?
I'm not going to lie to you for a second. I haven't watched about a minute of NFL this season, but I've been to San Francisco. It's one of my favorite places in the world, so I'm going to root for the 49ers. Hopefully they can get up.
Yeah, for me, I as I said, I like watching greatness, and Patrick Mahomes is great. So I want to see him win his first Super Bowl. So I would like to see Kansas City win, but I probably haven't watched enough 49ers to make a bet on it. That's for sure. Guys, we'll leave it there. Happy Super Bowl Sunday to all of our listeners. Make sure you like and subscribe on Apple and Spotify, or you can listen direct through the links in our Twitter page. But thank you very much for listening once again. We've been the Paceroos, and we'll see you again next time.